Good morning, everybody. Matt Barton here with this week's Broker Minute or Two. No, I'm not in jail. I'm in just a very stark, remote office. Hey, I hope your week's been going great. I wanted to share with you something that just came out recently on as an announcement by way of UtahRealEstate.com, but it applies to others that are on Flex and other systems. So, share my screen here. Any second. There we go. All right. First of all, let's actually start with a stat first. I've shared this in the sales meetings I went to recently. I hope you are doing the bare minimum of sharpening your saw, your industry knowledge each week. Have a calendar appointment to come in and look at rapid stats, or you can go to UtahRealtors.com and get the market stats summary, and gives you a lot of the same information. But I like this report on UtahRealEstate.com because it's the first thing that pops up. And if you just simply go down and say, this is the way it appears, and then if you just drop down the list and say 365 days, you get the percentage change over the last year. So listing counts up 36%, solds are up 6.5%, and under contracts are up 5.74%. I'm telling you guys, I'm just asking you to make a calendar item and do this on a weekly basis so that when somebody asks you that question, how's the market doing, you have something legitimate to say, impactful to say, because it makes you come across as the industry professional, which is a big thing to do when you're trying to win over people to do business with you. All right. Couldn't get through a broker minute without that. All right, so this is the announcement that came out. Let me move my picture here. Listing input forms are now renamed to data input forms. And part of the reason for that is in the exclusive right to sell listing agreement from UAR, which our company uses. At the last section, it talks about this, meaning the ERS and the data input form. So now the terms are congruent. Constitute the entire contract. And that's actually what I wanted to use this to segue into a bigger discussion. I just finished this month's sales meetings. We did St. George yesterday and had a good discussion with an agent. And it's a question that I've heard many times. And so I wanted to share it with you and use it as the rest of this discussion. So, we had a lawsuit recently in the past year where having a listing input form that was filled out and signed by the seller, frankly, saved us from being involved in a much larger problem, and definitely a more costly problem. So when I talk about these things, it's not from like some ivory tower of theoretical. I try to use real world situations that have impact on you and your business. My office managers will tell you one of my favorite sayings is, well, it's not a problem until it's a problem. And so this is kind of the discussion I have with agents sometimes, like, why are you being so particular? Why do you require this? It's just such an annoyance. And you know what? I get it. It's an annoyance for us too. But sometimes the things that are annoying are the very things that will save us if and when something goes sideways. So please understand that's the place that we come from. We're not trying to make your business, doing your business harder, more difficult, challenging. We're really doing it because of experience, and we're trying to do things the right way so we don't have a bigger problem when it turns into a bigger problem. Okay. So a subcategory of this is, what do you mean? You mean if we make a change in the remarks, we need to, do an addendum to the form and say now remarks to say this. And I want to put it in this category. There's kind of a good and a better and a best approach to a lot of things in life. And the best approach is, yes, to use the form, because bear with me here. When we do an ERS, it talks about changes, and changes need to be in writing, just like we have in our REPC. And so people say, well, isn't text writing or isn't email writing? And I'm like, my question back is, do you really want to try and have that fight if things go sideways? Or so I'm thinking back to the lawsuit we had a year ago. If things were in text only, we would probably still be involved in that lawsuit. But the fact that we had a form that is required by the ERS and any modification and changes need to comply to the terms of that agreement, which it has to be in writing and signed by the party. And that is a way more solid position to be. And so that's what we try and govern to as the company. When I train the office managers and the TCs, I am going to train them in best practices. And so they're going to reach out to you in that light of what is the best practices. I asked this agent, if it's annoying to go and do an addendum because there's change in remarks, and you know what, most situations probably not a problem. It probably isn't. But what if it is, right? And a lot of times it's things that we think aren't a problem that in fact turn out to be a problem. And so I said, would the time saved by not doing an addendum and just going, well, I have a text or I have an email. Again, if you got a good attorney, you might be able to prove the case, but do you really want to go down that path and see if you have a good attorney and pay for a good attorney to defend something which actually, if you'd done it right or the best way at the get-go, you would avoid that whole situation, right? And so we want to work with the agents, and there are extraneous circumstances, and we will be flexible with that. But our default is we're going to say, please get an addendum to the ERS if you're going to change something. One of the examples I used in sales meetings, I'm going to quickly recite it here, is I did a deal many years ago, and an agent had put in the remarks, it was a lot that my buyer was buying to build a house for his mom, a really nice thing for him to do. And in the remarks, it said, all fees have been paid to the city. And by the way, in capital letters, all fees have been paid to the city, all permits paid, and all utilities stubbed to the property. Well, long story short, we got out there, we bought the property, and lo and behold, we went to Rocky Mountain Power, and they said, no, electricity's 4 lots down. It's going to cost you nearly $5,000 to get it moved to your property. So I called the agent at that point and I said, hey, do you have a copy of the listing input form? Because we have this problem and blah, 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 and your seller's kind of responsible. And his comment was, oh, my seller didn't do the remarks. I did. So guess who becomes the liable party? The agent did. And that's a small one. $5,000 in the grand scheme of things going sideways is not a big deal, but it's still $5,000. And he ended up writing a check for $5,000 to make the buyer whole. Again, that's the best case scenario. But when somebody gets sideways and something's not correct and they sue you for $80,000, $100,000, man, at that point, you'll be asking, why didn't I just do it the best way? So that's my broker minute or 10 for this week. I wish you well. And if you have any questions in regards to this video, please reach out and I'll be happy to have a conversation with you. Have a great week.